Fleet Commander Taemin had seen many things in his 30 years of service with the Coalition Navy. He had witnessed the birth of stars, the death of planets, and the rise and fall of entire civilizations. But nothing had prepared him for what appeared on his screens that morning. The monitoring station orbiting Kepler 442b was quiet, just like every other day for the past 6 months. Taemin sipped his morning brew while reviewing routine patrol reports. His four-armed Altarian physique allowed him to multitask efficiently, reading 3 different reports while operating the station's main console. The neutral world below them spun peacefully, its blue-green surface unmarked by the wars that raged elsewhere in the galaxy. Then the alarm started screaming. "Commander!" Lieutenant Wu Jin shouted from the sensor station. His voice cracked with panic. "We have massive energy signatures dropping out of hyperspace. Multiple contacts, sir. Very large contacts." Taemin's coffee cup crashed to the floor as he spun around. The main display showed space around their position, and what he saw made his blood freeze. 12 enormous shapes were materializing from the void, their hulls gleaming with an unfamiliar metal that reflected starlight like mirrors. "Size estimates?" Taemin demanded, his training taking over despite his shock. "Sir, the largest vessel measures approximately 4 kilometers in length. The smallest is still larger than our heavy cruisers." Wu Jin's hands trembled as he worked his console. "I have never seen ships this size, Commander, not even in the historical archives." The vessels were unlike anything in Coalition databases. Their design was angular and aggressive, covered in what appeared to be weapon ports and armor plating. Strange symbols were painted along their hulls in bright red and white. As Taemin watched, smaller ships began launching from the larger vessels like angry insects from a disturbed nest. "Are they responding to our identification requests?" Taemin asked. "Negative, sir. They are ignoring all standard communication protocols." The communications officer, a young Altarian named Jin Ho, looked up with wide eyes. "But, sir, they are scanning us. Very thoroughly." The largest of the unknown ships moved closer to the monitoring station. Its massive bulk blocked out the stars behind it, casting the Coalition facility into shadow. Taemin could see details on its hull now: thick armor plating, massive gun turrets, and those strange symbols that seemed to pulse with inner light. "Commander," Jin Ho called out, his voice barely above a whisper, "we are receiving a transmission. Audio only." "Put it through." The bridge fell silent as a new voice filled the air. It spoke in perfect Coalition standard, but with an accent none of them had heard before. The voice was female, cold, and carried an authority that made even Taemin straighten in his chair. "Coalition Monitoring Station, this is Captain So Young, of the human battleship Soul's Vengeance. You will prepare to receive an official communication from the Human Colonial Defense Force." Taemin exchanged glances with his crew. Humans? He had heard of them in intelligence briefings. A primitive species confined to a single star system on the galaxy's outer rim. They had been classified as pre-industrial, barely capable of spaceflight. Yet here they were, commanding vessels that dwarfed anything the Coalition had ever built. "This is Fleet Commander Taemin of the Galactic Coalition Navy," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "We welcome contact with your species, Captain So Young. Perhaps we can arrange a formal diplomatic meeting to discuss—" "Commander." "Taemin," the human captain interrupted, her voice cutting through his words like a blade. "You will listen. You will not speak until I am finished." The audacity of the statement left Taemin speechless. No one spoke to a Coalition fleet commander in such a manner. but as he looked at the massive human ships surrounding his station, he decided that now was not the time for pride. 3 months ago, Captain So Young continued, coalition vessels entered human space without permission. They attacked civilian colonies. They kidnapped 50,000 human citizens. Men, women, and children were taken from their homes and transported to unknown locations within coalition territory. Tae-min felt his heart sink. He remembered the classified reports about the xenobiology expedition to the Outer Rim. The mission had been described as a routine specimen collection from a primitive world. But if these were the same humans, we have traced the vessels responsible to this sector, the captain's voice continued. We have tracked coalition supply routes, communication networks, and military installations. We know where our people are being held. On the main screen, the human fleet began to spread out, taking positions around the monitoring station. Each ship moved with precision and purpose, their formations speaking of military discipline and tactical expertise that contradicted everything the coalition knew about human capabilities. You have 72 hours, Captain So Young announced. 72 hours to return every human citizen taken from our colonies. Every man, woman, and child must be returned alive and unharmed. Any human found dead or permanently injured will result in the destruction of one coalition world. Taemin's mouth went dry. Captain, I believe there has been some misunderstanding. The coalition does not engage in the kidnapping of sentient beings. Perhaps if we could arrange a meeting with our diplomatic corps, Commander, the human captain's voice turned even colder. Do you see the weapons currently aimed at your station? Tae-min looked at his tactical display. Every human ship had multiple weapon systems locked onto the monitoring station. The energy readings were unlike anything he had ever seen. Each ship carried enough firepower to level a small city. I see them, he whispered. Good. Then you understand that this is not a negotiation. This is not a diplomatic request. This is a demand backed by the full military might of humanity. There was a pause, and when So Young spoke again, her words carried the weight of absolute certainty. We are not here to talk, Commander. We are here to collect our people. The only question is whether we do so over your cooperation or over your corpses. Lieutenant Wu Jin was frantically working at his console, trying to get detailed scans of the human vessels. Commander, he whispered urgently, their shield generators are producing energy outputs that exceed our theoretical maximums, and their weapons? Sir, I cannot even identify what type of weapons they are carrying. Furthermore, Captain So Young continued, do not assume that this fleet represents the full extent of human military capabilities. What you see here is a rescue operation, not a war fleet. If our people are not returned within 72 hours, you will see what a war fleet looks like. The transmission paused, and Tae-min could hear what sounded like activity in the background, orders being given, systems being activated. When So Young spoke again, there was something different in her voice, something that made Tae-min's skin crawl. Commander, I want you to understand something very clearly. Humans are not like other species you have encountered. We do not abandon our own. We do not negotiate with kidnappers. We do not forgive those who harm our families. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but every word came through with crystal clarity. We have traveled 800 light years to find our people. We have built these ships specifically to wage war against anyone who would take them from us. Do you really think we will simply leave if you ask politely? Tae-min looked around. His bridge at his crew. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders, waiting for him to somehow solve this impossible situation. But what could he do? His monitoring station carried no weapons beyond basic defensive systems. Even if he could somehow fight these humans, their ships outgunned him by factors he could not even calculate. "Captain So-Young," he said carefully, "I will immediately contact Coalition Command and relay your message. But you must understand, I am not authorized to negotiate the release of prisoners. Even if such prisoners exist, the decision would have to come from the highest levels of government." "Then I suggest you contact those highest levels very quickly," So-Young replied. "The clock is now ticking, Commander. 71 hours and 57 minutes remaining." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in absolute silence. Outside, the viewports, the human ships maintained their positions like predators waiting to strike. Their hulls gleamed in the starlight, and those strange red and white symbols seemed to pulse with menace. "Sir," Jin-Ho said quietly, "what are your orders?" Tae-min stared at the human fleet for a long moment. In all his years of service, he had never felt so completely outmatched. These humans had appeared from nowhere with technology that made coalition ships look like children's toys. They spoke with the confidence of a species that had never known defeat. "Send an emergency transmission to Coalition Command," he ordered. "Priority Alpha. Tell them we have first contact with an unknown species claiming to be human. Tell them—" He paused, looking again at the massive ships surrounding his station. "Tell them we may be looking at the beginning of a war we cannot win." As his crew scrambled to carry out his orders, Tae-min continued to stare at the human fleet. Somewhere in Coalition space, 50,000 human civilians were being held as research specimens, and their people had come to take them home. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you took something that belonged to humanity. The emergency session of the Coalition High Council convened within 6 hours of Commander Tae-min's transmission. Representatives from 47 different species gathered in the Great Chamber on Altus Prime, their voices creating a buzz of panic and confusion that echoed off the crystal walls. Chancellor Mi-young called for order, her violet skin pale with stress. As the elected leader of the coalition, she had dealt with border disputes, trade wars, and even the occasional pirate incursion. But nothing in her political career had prepared her for this moment. "The floor recognizes Dr. Wu Jin of the Xenobiology Institute," she announced, her voice carrying across the chamber through universal translators. Dr. Wu Jin approached the central podium, his tentacles writhing with nervous energy. His species, the Kelparians, were known throughout the galaxy for their scientific minds and careful research methods. But today, the normally confident scientist looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Honored representatives," he began, his voice shaking slightly, "I must confess to a grave error in judgment. 3 months ago, my department authorized what we believed to be a routine specimen collection mission to the Outer Rim territories." A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. Specimen collection was common practice when studying primitive species, but something in Wu Jin's tone suggested this had been anything but routine. The target world was designated as inhabited by pre-sapient bipeds, Wu Jin continued. Initial scans suggested a primitive civilization with limited technology, no signs of advanced space travel, no energy signatures indicating industrial development, and no response to our standard communication attempts. Senator Bo-Ra of the Zephyrian delegation stood up, her metallic features reflecting the chamber's lights. "Dr. Wu Jin, are you telling us that you authorized the abduction of sentient beings based on incomplete data? At the time, We did not believe they were sentient, Wu Jin protested. The behavioral patterns we observed suggested animal-level intelligence. Simple tool use, basic social structures, primitive dwellings. Every test we conducted indicated we were dealing with highly evolved animals, not a sapient species. Chancellor Mi Young leaned forward in her chair. Dr. Wu Jin, how many specimens were collected? The scientist's tentacles curled inward, a sign of extreme distress among his species. 50,000 individuals, men, women, and their offspring. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. 50,000 was not a specimen collection. It was a mass kidnapping. Even if the targets had been animals, such numbers would have required extensive authorization and oversight. Where are they now? Ma Young demanded, her voice cutting through the noise. The Central Research Facility on Kepler 7, Wu Jin replied quietly. They are being held in containment areas designed for long-term behavioral study. Admiral Nara of the Coalition Navy stood up, her 4 arms crossed in a gesture of disbelief. Dr. Wu Jin, I have reviewed the initial reports from Commander A. Taemin. These humans have demonstrated technology that exceeds our own capabilities. Their ships are larger and more advanced than anything in our fleet. How did you miss signs of such an advanced civilization? Wu Jin's tentacles writhed more violently. That is exactly the problem, Admiral. We found no evidence of advanced technology on their world. No space-capable vessels, no energy shields, no plasma weapons. Their cities used primitive power sources. Their vehicles moved on wheels along ground-level pathways. By every measure we used, they appeared to be centuries away from achieving spaceflight. Yet somehow they built a fleet that makes our dreadnoughts look like toys. Nara replied coldly. I have been reviewing the data continuously since receiving word of the human fleet, Wu Jin said. I believe we may have observed a colony world, not their home system. The humans we studied may have been living in a deliberately primitive manner, perhaps as part of some cultural choice or religious practice. The implications of this statement sent another wave of nervous chatter through the chamber. If the humans they had studied were colonists living without technology by choice, then the true human civilization might be far more advanced than anyone had imagined. Dr. Wu Jin, Chancellor Mi Young said slowly, what have you learned about these specimens since bringing them to our facility? The scientist activated a holographic display above the podium. Images appeared of the human captives, bipedal creatures with varying skin tones and facial features. They moved with purpose and intelligence, their eyes showing clear awareness of their surroundings. The behavioral data has been troubling, Wu Jin admitted. The specimens demonstrate complex language patterns with multiple dialects. They have created social hierarchies within their containment areas. They fashion tools from available materials with remarkable efficiency. Most disturbing, they have attempted to escape 17 times using increasingly sophisticated methods. Escape. Attempts suggest intelligence, Senator Bora observed. More than intelligence, Wu Jin replied. They show tactical thinking, group coordination, and long-term planning. One group spent 2 weeks slowly weakening a containment wall by working in shifts around the clock. Another group created a diversion while a smaller team attempted to access our computer systems. Admiral Nara leaned forward. They tried to hack our computers? Not tried, Admiral. They succeeded. Wu Jin's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. One of the specimens, a female designated as Subject 23,047, managed to access our local network using components salvaged from their food dispensers. She downloaded star charts, facility layouts, and guard rotation schedules before our security systems detected the intrusion. The chamber fell completely silent. The idea that primitive specimens could successfully hack Coalition computer systems was impossible to accept. Yet the evidence was being presented by one of their most respected scientists. Furthermore, Wu Jin continued, the specimens have been teaching each other skills. Those with technical knowledge share it with others. Those with leadership abilities organize work groups. They have essentially created their own military structure within our containment facility. Chancellor Mi Young stood up, her violet skin now almost white with shock. Dr. Wu Jin, are you telling us that we have been holding 50,000 members of an advanced alien military in our research facility? I believe we have been holding 50,000 citizens of a civilization that may be more technologically advanced than our own, Wu Jin replied. Citizens who now know the location of our research facilities, our security procedures, and our military capabilities. The implications were staggering. Not only had the Coalition accidentally committed an act of war against an unknown species, but they had given that species detailed intelligence about Coalition operations in the process. A new voice spoke from the back of the chamber. If I may, honored representatives? All heads turned to see a figure approaching the podium. It was Jin Ho, the diplomatic attaché who had been present during the first human contact. His usual calm demeanor was replaced by obvious stress. I have additional information from Commander Taemin's monitoring station, Jin Ho announced. The humans have been broadcasting on multiple frequencies since their arrival. Not to us, but to each other. Our translation computers have been working to decode their communications. What have you learned? Mi Young asked. Jin Ho activated his own holographic display. The human fleet consists of 12 heavy battleships, 47 escort vessels, and an unknown number of smaller craft. But more importantly, we have learned that this is only one of several fleets currently operating in Coalition space. The chamber erupted in panicked voices. Multiple fleets meant the humans had committed massive resources to finding their missing people. How many fleets? Admiral Nara demanded. Based on their communications, at least 7 separate battle groups are currently conducting operations across Coalition territory, Jin Ho replied. They are systematically searching every system that has had contact with our xenobiology expeditions in the past year. This is impossible, Senator Bora protested. Where did they get the ships, the resources, the technology? 3 months ago, we had no record of their existence beyond a single primitive world. Jin Ho's expression grew even more grim. According to their communications, honored Senator, they have been preparing for this possibility for decades. The moment their colony worlds were established, they began construction of what they call their colonial defense force. The ships we are seeing were built specifically for one purpose, to rescue human civilians from hostile alien forces. The weight of this revelation settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. The humans had not only achieved advanced spaceflight technology, but they had anticipated the possibility of alien contact and prepared for war. There is more, Jin Ho continued. We have intercepted communications between the human fleet commander and their home system. Admiral Hyajin, the officer in charge of all human military operations in Coalition space, has requested permission to begin what she calls punitive actions if their people are not returned within the specified time frame. Chancellor Mi Young slumped in her chair. How long do we have? 64 hours and 37 minutes remaining, Jin Ho replied. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of their situation became clear. They had accidentally committed an act of war against a species that had been preparing for this exact scenario. The humans were not primitive. They were an advanced military civilization that valued their people above all else, and in less than 3 days, that civilization would be coming for their missing citizens. Whether the coalition cooperated or not, Admiral Nara stood in the coalition's primary command center, watching displays that showed the locations of human fleets across their territory. Red markers indicated confirmed human battle groups, while yellow markers showed suspected positions. The map looked like a disease spreading through coalition space. "Admiral," called out Commander Young-Sik from the intelligence station, "we have received new footage from the Zephyrian border worlds. The humans have begun what they call rescue operations." Nara walked over to Young-Sik's station, her forearms crossed in a gesture of deep concern. Young-Sik was one of their best intelligence officers, but even his usually calm demeanor showed cracks of stress. "Show me," she ordered. The main display switched to show footage from security cameras on Zephyr Station, a mining facility in the outer territories. The timestamp showed the recording was only 6 hours old. Nara watched as sleek human ships approached the station with movements that seemed almost organic in their smoothness. The Zephyrians refused to allow the humans to search their facilities, Young-Sik explained. They claimed they had no knowledge of any human prisoners and demanded the human fleet leave their space immediately. On the screen, Nara could see the human ships responding to the Zephyrian refusal. What happened next made her blood run cold. The human vessels did not open fire randomly or destroy the station. Instead, they demonstrated a level of precision that spoke of terrifying competence. First, all communication arrays on the station went dark. Then, one by one, the station's defensive weapons simply stopped working. The humans had disabled every single defensive system without damaging the station itself or harming any of the personnel inside. "How did they do that?" Nara whispered. "We are still analyzing the data," Young-Sik replied. "But it appears they used some form of directed electromagnetic pulse that specifically targeted military systems while leaving life support and civilian equipment untouched." The footage continued to show human boarding craft attaching to the station. Within minutes, human soldiers were moving through the corridors with a purpose that suggested they knew exactly where they were going. The humans found 73 human civilians in the station's research wing, Young-Sik continued. "But Admiral, look at how they move." Nara studied the human soldiers carefully. They moved through the station like they owned it, checking corners and clearing rooms with efficiency that spoke of extensive training. But more than that, they moved with a confidence that suggested they had no doubt about their success. "Tatas. Zephyrians had armed security forces throughout the station," Young-Sik noted. "Over 200 trained soldiers with modern weapons in defensive positions." "What happened to them?" Young-Sik switched to another camera angle. "The humans gave them exactly one opportunity to surrender. When the Zephyrians refused, this happened." The footage showed human soldiers encountering Zephyrian defenders in a main corridor. The Zephyrians opened fire first, their plasma weapons creating bright flashes of light. Nara expected to see a firefight, but what she saw instead defied everything she knew about combat. The human soldiers moved like they could predict where each shot would go. They flowed around the plasma bolts like water, never stopping their advance. Their return fire was precise and devastating. Each shot found its target with mechanical accuracy. In less than 30 seconds, the entire Zephyrian defensive position was neutralized. The humans had not killed anyone, but every Zephyrian soldier was on the ground, unconscious or paralyzed by some form of non-lethal weapon. They did this throughout the entire station, Young Sik said quietly. 200 Zephyrian soldiers defeated in under 10 minutes, with 0 casualties on either side. Nara stared at the footage in disbelief. The Zephyrians were known as some of the finest warriors in the galaxy. Their military training was legendary, their weapons among the most advanced available. Yet the humans had moved through them like they were children playing with toys. "Show me more," she ordered. Young Sik brought up additional footage from different locations. Each scene showed the same pattern: human forces approaching coalition facilities, making polite but firm demands for the return of human civilians, and then demonstrating overwhelming superiority when those demands were refused. At a research station on Kepler Prime, human Marines had walked through defensive barriers that should have stopped heavy vehicles. The barriers simply vanished as the humans approached, as if their technology could neutralize coalition defenses without effort. At a military depot on Altus 7, human pilots had engaged coalition fighter squadrons in what should have been an even battle. Instead, the coalition pilots found themselves outmaneuvered by human craft that moved in ways that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. "Admiral," Young Sik said, his voice barely above a whisper, "we have also received reports from our medical teams who examined the aftermath of these encounters. What did they find? The humans are not using standard weapons. Their firearms appear to fire projectiles that can penetrate any known armor, but they also have settings that can render targets unconscious without permanent harm. Their pilots are pulling maneuvers that should kill them from acceleration forces alone, but somehow they survive." Nara studied the tactical data scrolling across her screens. Every encounter showed the same result: complete human victory with minimal casualties. But it was not just the technology that concerned her. It was the way the humans fought. "They fight like they have done this before," she observed. "That is what troubles me most, Admiral," Young Sik replied. "These are not the actions of a species encountering galactic warfare for the first time. They fight like they have been planning for this exact scenario for years." A new alert sounded across the command center. Young Sik quickly accessed the incoming data, and his face went pale. "Admiral, we have a transmission from Captain So Young of the human flagship. She is requesting to speak directly with coalition leadership." "Put her through." The main display switched to show the interior of a human bridge. Nara had expected to see a primitive command center, but what she saw instead looked more advanced than coalition ships. The walls were covered with displays showing tactical information, and every surface seemed designed for maximum efficiency. Captain So Young appeared on the screen, her expression calm, but her eyes showing a coldness that made Nara uncomfortable. Behind her, Nara could see other humans working at stations with movements that spoke of long practice and perfect coordination. "Admiral Nara," So Young said, somehow knowing exactly who she was speaking to. "I understand you have been watching our rescue operations." "Captain So Young," Nara replied carefully, "the Coalition wishes to resolve this situation peacefully. However, your forces are attacking sovereign facilities without provocation." So Young's expression did not change. "Admiral, we are not attacking anyone. We are recovering stolen property." "Stolen property?" "Our people," So Young replied simply. 50,000 human citizens were taken from their homes without consent. That makes them stolen property, and we are taking them back." Nara tried to maintain her diplomatic composure. "Captain, surely we can negotiate a peaceful resolution to this misunderstanding." For the first time, So Young's expression changed. She leaned forward slightly, and Nara could see something dangerous in her eyes. "Admiral, Let me explain something about humans that your intelligence services seem to have missed. We do not negotiate for the return of our people. We do not bargain with kidnappers. We do not accept excuses or delays when our families are in danger. The captain gestured to something off-screen, and the display split to show tactical information about human fleet positions. Nara saw dozens of red markers scattered across Coalition space, each representing a human battle group. What you have witnessed so far represents human forces operating under strict rules of engagement, So Young continued. We are authorized to use minimal necessary force to recover our people, but those rules can change. So Young's voice dropped to a whisper, but every word came through with crystal clarity. Admiral, the forces you have seen represent less than 5% of human military capacity. The ships conducting rescue operations are not our warships. They are our rescue vessels, designed specifically for extracting civilians from hostile environments. Nara felt her heart skip a beat. If these overwhelming forces were just rescue ships, what did human warships look like? Furthermore, So Young continued, we have been monitoring Coalition communications since our arrival. We know about your emergency council sessions. We know about your military preparations. We know you are trying to decide whether to fight us or surrender. The human captain leaned back in her chair, her expression returning to that unsettling calm. Admiral, let me save you the trouble of making that decision. You cannot fight us. Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your ships cannot match our speed or maneuverability. Your soldiers cannot compete with our training or equipment. So Young paused, letting her words sink in. But none of that matters, because we are not here to conquer you. We are here to collect our people and leave. However, if you continue to resist our rescue operations, we will demonstrate what human warships can actually do. The transmission ended, leaving Nara staring at a blank screen. Around her, the command center had fallen completely silent. Every officer had heard the human captain's words, and every officer understood what they meant. The Coalition was not facing an invasion. They were facing something far worse. They were facing a species that viewed the rescue of their people as more important than galactic peace. Chancellor Mi Young stood in the Coalition's most secure war room, surrounded by the highest-ranking military officers in the galaxy. The circular chamber was built deep underground on Altus Prime, designed to survive even direct planetary bombardment. Today, it felt more like a tomb than a command center. General Hun Wu of the Coalition Defense Force activated the room's main holographic display. Red markers showed human fleet positions throughout Coalition space, and new ones appeared every few hours as more human ships arrived from unknown locations. The situation is deteriorating rapidly, Hyun Woo announced to the assembled leaders. Human forces have successfully recovered over 30,000 of their people from various facilities across 17 star systems. Our resistance efforts have failed completely. Senator Bo-Ra shifted uncomfortably in her chair. General, surely our combined military forces can mount some effective defense. We have hundreds of ships, thousands of trained soldiers. Senator, Admiral Na-Ra replied from across the table, I have reviewed every engagement between our forces and the humans. We have not won a single encounter, not one. The weight of this statement settled over the room like a heavy blanket. The Coalition military had fought wars across the galaxy for centuries. They had never faced an enemy they could not at least damage. What about our planetary defense systems? Asked Commander Sung Ho of the Outer Rim Fleet. Surely the humans cannot simply ignore our most advanced weapons. General Hyun Woo activated a new display showing footage from the battle at Kepler 9. The planet was home to one of the Coalition's most heavily defended research facilities, protected by orbital weapons platforms and a full squadron of battleships. The humans arrived at Kepler 9 6 hours ago, Hyun-woo explained. The planetary Commander Admiral Jasik refused their demands and ordered all defenses to open fire. The footage showed the moment when Coalition forces engaged the human fleet. Dozens of energy beams and missile salvos reached out toward the human ships, weapons powerful enough to crack a moon's surface. The human vessels did not even slow down. Their shields absorbed everything we threw at them, Hyun-woo continued quietly. Weapons that should have vaporized their ships had no visible effect whatsoever. On the display, the human fleet approached the orbital defense platforms with the same calm efficiency they had shown everywhere else. But instead of disabling the platforms, they did something that made every person in the war room go silent. One of the smaller human ships fired a single beam of energy at the largest defense platform. The beam was thin, almost invisible, but its effect was immediate and terrifying. The massive platform, built to withstand the firepower of entire fleets, simply disappeared. Not destroyed, disappeared. One moment it was there, a kilometer-long structure bristling with weapons and armor. The next moment, there was only empty space and a few particles of dust. "What kind of weapon can do that?" whispered Senator Bo-Ra. "We do not know," Admiral Nara replied. "Our scientists are calling it complete molecular disintegration. The platform was not blown apart or melted down. Every atom in its structure was somehow separated from every other atom." Chancellor Mi-young leaned forward, her violet skin now completely pale. "How many of our people were on that platform?" 12,000 Coalition personnel, Hyun-woo answered. "All gone in an instant." The room fell silent as the implications became clear. The humans had just demonstrated the ability to erase any target from existence with surgical precision. No defense could stop it. No armor could resist it. "There is more," Admiral Nara said, activating another display. After destroying the platform, the human commander sent a message to the remaining Coalition forces in the system. The display showed a human officer speaking from what appeared to be a command bridge. He was tall and lean, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to look directly through the camera. "Coalition forces," the human said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "I am Admiral Hyun-woo of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You have just witnessed what happens when you fire upon human vessels engaged in rescue operations." The human admiral paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "Your orbital platform contained 12,000 personnel. Those 12,000 people died because your commander chose to attack us rather than cooperate with our rescue mission. Their deaths are on his hands, not ours." Chancellor Mi-young watched the recording with growing horror. The human spoke about the destruction of 12,000 lives with the same tone someone might use to discuss the weather. "You now have a choice," the human admiral continued. "You can continue to resist our efforts to recover our people, in which case we will continue to remove obstacles from our path. Or you can stand aside and allow us to complete our mission peacefully." The recording paused, and Admiral Nara looked around the room at the faces of Coalition leadership. Every person present understood what they had just witnessed. The humans were not making threats. They were explaining facts. The Coalition forces at Kepler 9 surrendered immediately after receiving this message, Nara reported. The humans recovered 800 of their people from the research facility and left the system without further incident. General Hyun-woo brought up a new display showing strategic projections. "Based on current intelligence, we estimate the humans will have recovered all their people within 36 hours. The question is what happens after that. What do you mean? Asked Commander Sung Ho. The humans have made no demands beyond the return of their people, Hyun Woo explained. They have not requested territory, resources, or political concessions. But they have also demonstrated military technology that makes our entire civilization defenseless against them. Senator Bo-Ra stood up, her metallic features reflecting the room's emergency lighting. Surely they will simply leave once they have their people back. They have shown no interest in conquest. Senator, Chancellor Mi-young said slowly, I have been reviewing the psychological profiles our xenobiology teams compiled during their research on human behavior. The humans do not think like other species we have encountered. She activated her own display, showing behavioral data collected from the human captives over the past 3 months. Most species, when threatened, respond with either submission or aggression based on their assessment of relative strength. Humans appear to operate on entirely different principles. The data showed patterns of human behavior that had puzzled coalition researchers for months. Even when faced with overwhelming force, the human captives had never stopped trying to escape. Even when punishment was certain, they had continued to resist their captors. They do not calculate odds the way we do, Mi-young continued. They do not weigh costs against benefits in their decision-making process. They appear to operate on what our researchers have termed principle-based logic. Meaning what? Asked Admiral Nara. Meaning they do things because they believe those things are right, regardless of the consequences to themselves. Mi-young's voice carried a note of something that might have been respect or terror. They rescued their people not because it was strategically advantageous, but because leaving their people in captivity was unacceptable to them. The implications of this analysis sent a chill through the room. If humans operated on principles rather than practical considerations, then traditional diplomatic solutions might not work. Chancellor, General Hyun Woo said carefully, there is one more thing you need to know. Our intelligence networks have been monitoring human communications throughout this crisis. We have decoded some of their military traffic. What have you learned? Hyun Woo's expression grew grim. The human forces currently in coalition space are not their entire military. According to their communications, this rescue operation represents approximately 2% of total human military capacity. The number hit the room like a physical blow. 2%. The forces that had effortlessly swept aside coalition defenses across dozens of star systems represented only a tiny fraction of human military might. Furthermore, Hyun Woo continued, we have detected massive energy signatures at the edge of coalition space. Long-range sensors suggest the approach of additional human vessels, but these ships are different from the rescue fleets. Different? How? They are much larger, Chancellor. Some of the energy signatures suggest vessels over 10 kilometers in length, and unlike the rescue fleets, these ships are not broadcasting identification codes or making contact attempts. Chancellor. Mi-young closed her eyes, trying to process the full scope of what they faced. The coalition had accidentally started a war with a species that possessed technology beyond their understanding and military forces that dwarfed their own. What are your recommendations? She asked quietly. General Hyun Woo looked around the room at his fellow officers before answering. Chancellor, we recommend immediate and unconditional surrender. We should contact the human forces, offer full cooperation with their rescue efforts, and pray that they are willing to accept our surrender rather than pursue retribution for what we have done to their people. The room fell silent as the full weight of defeat settled over the coalition's leadership. For the first time in galactic history, they faced an enemy they could not fight, could not negotiate with, and could not escape from. They had awakened something terrible, and now they would have to live with the consequences. The emergency transmission reached every coalition world simultaneously. Chancellor Mi Young's face appeared on screens across the galaxy as she prepared to announce the most difficult decision in coalition history. "Citizens of the Galactic Coalition," she began, her violet skin pale with exhaustion and stress. "I speak to you today about a crisis that threatens our very existence. For the past 72 hours, we have been in contact with a previously unknown species called humans." In the Coalition War Room, Admiral Nara watched the broadcast while monitoring incoming reports from across their territory. The situation had deteriorated beyond all hope of military solution. Human forces were now operating freely in 43 star systems, and coalition resistance had crumbled completely. "The human species has technology that exceeds our own by factors we cannot calculate," Mi Young continued. "They have demonstrated the ability to disable our defenses, neutralize our weapons, and destroy our installations without suffering any losses themselves." On her tactical display, Nara could see the locations of human rescue fleets. Each red marker represented forces that had swept aside coalition defenses like they were toys. But more troubling were the new markers appearing at the edge of coalition space. Much larger ships that had not yet identified themselves. "However," the Chancellor continued, "it has become clear that our actions have provoked something far worse than a military engagement. We have awakened the fury of a species that values their people above all other considerations." The broadcast paused as Mi Young gathered herself for what came next. In the war room, General Hyun Woo received an urgent message from one of his field commanders. "Admiral," he called out to Nara, "we have a problem. Captain Da-un's Special Forces team has gone dark." Nara turned from the broadcast to face Hyun Woo. "What do you mean, gone dark?" 3 hours ago, Captain Da-un and her elite infiltration team departed for a classified mission. Their orders were to infiltrate the human flagship and eliminate key human leadership. Hyun Woo's expression showed deep concern. "We have lost all contact with them." The plan had been desperate from the beginning. Captain Da-un commanded the Coalition's most elite Special Forces unit, soldiers trained for the most dangerous missions behind enemy lines. If anyone could succeed in eliminating human leadership, it would be her team. Any word from the human fleet? Nara asked. "That is the problem, Admiral. The human ships continue operating as if nothing has happened. If our team had succeeded, surely there would be some disruption in their command structure." Nara studied the tactical displays showing human fleet positions. The ships maintained their perfect formations, continuing their rescue operations, with the same mechanical efficiency they had shown since arriving. If Captain Da-un's team had succeeded in eliminating human leadership, there was no sign of it. An alert sounded across the war room as a new transmission arrived from the human flagship. Nara immediately ordered it to be put on the main screen, dreading what she might see. The display showed the interior of a human ship, but not the bridge she had expected. Instead, the camera revealed what appeared to be a detention area. Captain Da-un and her 12-person Special Forces team knelt on the floor with their hands secured behind their backs. Standing behind them was a human who did not appear to be military personnel. He wore simple work clothes and had grease stains on his hands, suggesting he was some kind of maintenance worker or engineer. But his posture and expression showed none of the submission Nara would have expected from a civilian. "Coalition forces," the human said, his voice calm and steady. "I am Chief Engineer Sang Min of the Soul's Vengeance. Approximately 2 hours ago, these individuals attempted to infiltrate our vessel with the apparent intent of assassinating our command staff. Nara felt her heart sink. If the humans had captured Da'un's team so easily, then even their most elite forces were no match for human capabilities. "I want you to understand something about human ship operations," Sangmin continued. "Every person aboard this vessel, from the commanding admiral to the food service personnel, has received the same basic military training. We do not have civilians on our warships." The engineer gestured toward Captain Da'un, who was glaring at her captors with undisguised hatred despite her helpless position. "Your Special Forces team is quite skilled by galactic standards," Sangmin admitted. "They successfully penetrated our outer security perimeters and made it nearly halfway to the bridge before being detected. However, they made a critical error in their planning. They assumed that human engineers, technicians, and support staff would be easy targets," Sangmin explained. "Instead, they discovered that our maintenance crews are trained to the same combat standards as your elite soldiers." The implications of this statement were staggering. If human support personnel were equivalent to coalition special forces, what were their actual soldiers capable of? "Furthermore," Sangmin continued, "your infiltrators brought weapons designed to kill human leadership. This tells us something important about coalition intentions." The engineer's expression hardened, and Nara could see something dangerous in his eyes. Up until this point, human forces have operated under strict rules of engagement. We have used minimum necessary force to recover our people. We have avoided causing unnecessary casualties among coalition personnel. We have treated this as a rescue operation rather than a military campaign. Sangmin paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "However, an assassination attempt against human command staff represents an escalation that requires a response. Admiral Haye-Jin has been in contact with Human Colonial Command, and new orders have been issued to all human forces in coalition space." Nara watched in growing horror as the implications became clear. The humans had been showing restraint up to this point, treating the situation as a rescue mission rather than a war. But the failed assassination attempt had convinced them that the coalition would never stop trying to kill human personnel. "Effective immediately," Sangmin announced. "Human forces are authorized to use any level of force necessary to complete our mission and ensure the safety of human personnel. The diplomatic phase of this operation is now concluded." The transmission ended, leaving the war room in absolute silence. Nara looked around at the faces of coalition leadership and saw her own terror reflected in their expressions. "What does that mean?" whispered Commander Sung-ho. Before anyone could answer, alerts began sounding across every console in the war room. Incoming reports flooded in from across coalition space, each one bringing worse news than the last. "Admiral," called out Lieutenant Yun-ji from the communications station, "we are receiving reports from the Kepler-12 system. The human fleet there has changed their approach." Nara hurried to Yun-ji's station and reviewed the incoming data. What she saw made her blood freeze. The human rescue fleet at Kepler-12 had been negotiating with local authorities for the return of human prisoners. The negotiations had been progressing slowly but peacefully, with coalition officials stalling for time while hoping for a miracle. Now, the humans were no longer negotiating. The footage showed human ships approaching the research facility where human civilians were being held. But instead of the careful surgical operations they had conducted before, the humans were now using overwhelming force. The facility's defensive systems were not disabled. They were completely destroyed. The building's walls were not penetrated. They were vaporized. Coalition personnel were not stunned unconscious. They were eliminated with lethal force. "How long did this take?" Nara asked quietly. 7 minutes, Admiral. 7 minutes from the start of the operation to the recovery of all human prisoners. Reports continued to flood in from other systems. At every location where human rescue operations were ongoing, the approach had changed dramatically. The humans were no longer concerned with minimizing coalition casualties or preserving coalition property. "Admiral," General Hyun-woo called out, "long-range sensors are detecting the approach of those larger human vessels. They will reach coalition core systems within 18 hours. Nara looked at the sensor data and felt her remaining hope disappear. The approaching ships were massive, some over 15 kilometers in length. These were not rescue vessels or even the battleships they had been facing. These were something else entirely. "What are they?" she whispered. "Based on their energy signatures and configuration," Hyun-woo replied, "our analysts believe they are what humans call siege platforms, ships designed specifically for the complete destruction of fortified positions." The meaning was clear. Humans were no longer content to simply rescue their people and leave. The assassination attempt had convinced them that the coalition represented a permanent threat to human safety. "General," Nara said quietly, "prepare a priority transmission to all coalition forces. Full surrender, effective immediately. All personnel are to stand down and cooperate fully with human operations." "Yes, Admiral," as Hyun-woo prepared the surrender order. Nara continued to watch the tactical displays showing human forces across coalition space. In 18 hours, those massive siege platforms would arrive, and the galaxy would learn what happened when humanity stopped showing mercy. The coalition had made their choice when they approved the assassination attempt. Now they would face the consequences of that choice. The Coalition High Council chamber had been transformed into something resembling a funeral hall. Representatives from 47 species sat in absolute silence, watching the main display that showed human siege platforms approaching their core systems. The massive ships moved through space, like harbingers of doom, their hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Captain So-young stood at the center of the chamber, no longer speaking from a ship's bridge, but present, in person. She had arrived on Altus Prime in a small human transport, accompanied by only a handful of personnel. The boldness of entering coalition space with such a small escort spoke volumes about human confidence. Chancellor Mi-young rose from her seat, her violet skin showing the strain of the past week. The coalition's surrender had been transmitted to every human fleet in their territory, but the siege platforms had continued their approach without acknowledgement. "Captain So-young," Mi-young began, her voice barely steady, "the coalition formally surrenders to human forces. We are prepared to discuss terms for ending this conflict." So-young looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. Her expression showed no triumph, no satisfaction at their defeat. Instead, there was something that might have been disappointment. "Chancellor Mi-young," So-young replied, "I appreciate your willingness to discuss terms. However, you seem to misunderstand the current situation." The human captain activated a holographic display that showed the locations of all recovered human civilians. Green markers indicated successful rescues, while a few remaining red markers showed facilities that had not yet been reached. "As of 6 hours ago, we have recovered 49,734 of our people," So-young announced. "The remaining 266 individuals are being held at 3 facilities in your core systems." Dr. Wu Jin, the xenobiologist whose mistake had started this crisis, stood up with visible effort. His tentacles writhed with nervous energy as he addressed the human captain. "Captain, those facilities have already received orders to release all human prisoners immediately. There should be no need for further military action." So Young turned to face Dr. Wu Jin directly. "Dr. Wu Jin, we have been monitoring communications from those facilities. The personnel there have refused to comply with surrender orders. They have stated their intention to destroy the remaining human prisoners rather than allow them to be rescued." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. The idea that coalition personnel would murder prisoners rather than surrender them was unthinkable to most representatives. Furthermore, So Young continued, raising her voice to cut through the noise, "We have detected the movement of coalition military forces toward those same facilities. It appears that elements of your military are planning a final stand using our people as shields." Admiral Nara stood up, her 4 arms spread in a gesture of denial. "Captain, I assure you that no such orders have been issued. Any coalition personnel taking such actions are acting without authorization." "Admiral Nara," So Young replied, "it does not matter whether these actions are authorized or not. What matters is that they are happening." The human captain gestured, and the display changed to show real-time footage from the 3 remaining facilities. Coalition soldiers could be seen taking defensive positions around the buildings where human civilians were being held. "The commanders of these facilities have made their intentions clear," So Young continued. "They believe that threatening our people will force us to negotiate more favorable terms for the coalition." Chancellor Mi-young slumped in her chair. "Captain, surely we can find a peaceful solution to this final crisis. What do you require from us?" For the first time since entering the chamber, So Young's expression softened slightly. "Chancellor, I want you to understand something about human psychology. When our people are threatened, we do not calculate odds or weigh strategic options. We respond with whatever force is necessary to ensure their safety." The captain paused, looking around at the faces of coalition leadership. "The siege platforms approaching your core systems carry weapons capable of sterilizing entire planets. Each platform can eliminate all life on a world within minutes. But that is not why they are here." "Then why?" whispered Senator Bo-Ra. "They are here because the commanders holding our people believe that threatening civilian casualties will make us hesitate," So Young explained. "They are about to learn that threatening human civilians has the opposite effect." As if summoned by her words, a new transmission appeared on the chamber's main display. The screen showed the bridge of one of the approaching siege platforms, and the human officer who appeared made everyone in the chamber go silent. Admiral Hyejin was everything the coalition had feared human military leadership would be. Tall, imposing, with eyes that seemed to look directly through anyone she focused on. Her uniform was simple but carried an authority that filled the screen. "Coalition leadership," Admiral Hyejin began, her voice carrying absolute command authority. "I am Admiral Hyejin of the Human Colonial Defense Force. I am addressing you from the siege platform Incheon's Hammer." Behind her, the bridge of the massive ship bustled with activity. Humans moved with practiced efficiency, preparing weapon systems that could destroy entire civilizations. 47 minutes ago, coalition personnel at the Kepler Alpha Research facility executed 12 human civilians, Admiral Hyejin announced. The words hit the chamber like a physical blow. 12 human civilians had been murdered while the coalition leadership sat in their chamber discussing surrender terms. The facility commander, a Colonel Minseo, transmitted a message stating that 1 human civilian would be executed every hour until human forces withdrew from Coalition space, the Admiral continued. Chancellor Mi-young stood up, her voice breaking with emotion. Admiral, we had no knowledge of these actions. We will immediately order— Chancellor, Admiral Hyojin interrupted. The time for orders has passed. The Kepler Alpha facility no longer exists. The display switched to show space where the research facility had been located, where once there had been a massive complex housing thousands of Coalition personnel. There was now only empty space and expanding clouds of debris. The facility, its personnel, and the planet it was built on have been removed from existence. Admiral Hyojin stated with the same tone someone might use to discuss the weather. The implications were staggering. The humans had not just destroyed a facility, they had eliminated an entire planet in response to the execution of 12 human civilians. The remaining Coalition facilities holding human prisoners now have 30 minutes to release them unharmed. The Admiral continued. Any facility that harms human civilians will share the same fate as Kepler Alpha. Senator Bora stood up, her metallic features reflecting the chamber's emergency lighting. Admiral, surely the destruction of an entire planet is excessive retaliation for— Senator, Admiral Hyojin's voice cut through her words like ice. Let me explain something about human military doctrine that your intelligence services seem to have missed. The human admiral leaned forward, and her eyes seemed to bore into every person in the chamber. We do not retaliate proportionally. We do not seek to balance casualties or match levels of force. When our people are murdered, we respond with overwhelming and absolute force designed to ensure that such actions never happen again. The chamber fell completely silent as the full implications became clear. The planet Kepler Alpha contained approximately 4 million Coalition citizens, Admiral Hyojin continued. Those 4 million people died because 12 humans were executed. This is not cruelty. This is mathematics. Every species in the galaxy will now understand the exact cost of harming human civilians. Captain So-young, still standing in the center of the chamber, spoke quietly. Admiral, what is the status of the remaining facilities? Both facilities have surrendered unconditionally and are releasing all human prisoners, Admiral Hyojin replied. Our people will be safely recovered within the hour. The crisis was over. All 50,000 human civilians would be returned safely, but the galaxy had been forever changed by what they had witnessed. Chancellor Mi-young, Captain So-young said, turning to face the Coalition leadership, humanity is prepared to discuss the terms of our future relationship. Mi-young looked around at her fellow representatives before responding. What are your terms? Complete transparency in all Coalition activities. Immediate membership for humanity in the Coalition with full veto power over all decisions affecting human interests. Formal recognition that human civilians anywhere in the galaxy are under Earth's protection. The terms were non-negotiable, and everyone in the chamber knew it. The Coalition would accept them or face the same fate as Kepler Alpha. Furthermore, So-young continued, humanity will establish permanent monitoring stations throughout Coalition space to ensure compliance with these terms. Any attempt to harm human interests will result in immediate and overwhelming response. Chancellor Mi-young nodded slowly. We accept your terms, Captain. As the formal surrender documents were prepared, Dr. Wu-jin approached Captain So-young privately. Captain, he said quietly, I must ask, how long has humanity been preparing for this scenario? So-young looked at the scientist who had made the mistake that changed galactic history. Dr. Wu-jin, Humanity has been preparing for the possibility of hostile alien contact since we first looked up at the stars. We always knew that someday we might encounter species that viewed us as inferior or expendable. She gestured toward the display showing human fleet positions across Coalition space. Every ship you have seen, every weapon we have used, every tactic we have employed, all of it was designed and built specifically for one purpose: to ensure that no one, anywhere in the galaxy, would ever again make the mistake of treating human lives as disposable. The galaxy had learned what happened when you underestimated humanity. They would not make that mistake again.